I'm Leisha and I'm the blog manager at her International Film Festival. And I'm here today with Katie O'Hara, whose film The Lockdown Tapes will be showing at the festival in less than 2 weeks' time. Very exciting. Katie, do you want to give us a brief introduction? Just tell us who you are and talk about your film career, I suppose.
Okay. So I'm Katie O'Hara. I have done film quite literally all of my life. I started at this really independent film company in my village when I was 13, just like helping out on random documentaries about our village. And then I went to the BFI, so I did some like short weekend courses with them, filmed my first like horror film, my first AD. And then I ended up being sent to write articles for the BFI's Bigger Picture. I made a couple of web series and things like that. Then I went and I did my undergrad degree. I did a science degree in film and television production. And I learned so much stuff that I didn't realise I needed to know about the film world, about tech, about TV filming, cameras, organising. And that's kind of when I found a love for documentaries and also production, that kind of side of things. So the summer before my final year, I made my first documentary, which was actually in the festival last year. And then once I'd done my dis and I finished, that's when the pandemic hit. So it was really weird. I was doing my dis in the middle of the pandemic and I thought, okay, so everyone's stuck at home. I have this crew who worked on my previous documentary and I know they're up for making something and I know I want to make something. So I thought, how can we document what is happening, but in kind of a different way and talk about the lives and experiences of normal people behind closed doors that probably haven't been spoken about. So the lockdown tapes is very much about that. It's about the normal people, but also like the frontline doctors, the business owners, the international students, the civil servants, a whole range of people who suffered with mental health, people who lost people throughout the pandemic, and it really kind of brings that all together to kind of allow people to experience not only what it was like for you, but like for other people as well. Also, I made that. That came out in start this year, but I made it the year before. After that, I then went and did my master's degree in film at Newcastle. And I recently finished that and I've now found myself I was really lucky to find myself in a position where I'm now a junior producer at a video kind of production agency here.
Oh, very good. Congratulations.
Thank you. So I feel like I've been very lucky with where everything's kind of gone. And I hope after that, my goal in 30, 40, however many years when I'm much older, is to hopefully one day run my own production company and make documentaries and fiction films about subjects which might otherwise not have that platform. So that's kind of who I am, what I've done, and where I want to go.
Brilliant. Very varied career for someone so young. You got like to started at 13 as well. Like I think obviously with things like her International Film Festival now, it's maybe a little bit easier for people at that age to get involved in film. So it's really cool to hear of someone who's already kind of done it, started from there. And yeah, the documentary was absolutely brilliant. It covered so much in such a short runtime. Like it was fascinating, really well done. You say that the crew who worked on your last film worked on this one with you. So I'd be interested to hear like how different it was to have to, like, even at the start of your documentary, it says that it includes a disclaimer that the crew abided by social distancing regulations. So it'd be really interesting to hear just like on the ground how different that was and how much more difficult it might have made it. Are there like any sides, I suppose, to...
So my first documentary, I filmed it in the summer of 2019. So that was pre-pandemic. I had a much larger crew. I had like 11, 12 people, or people who had applied for it, and I picked 4 specific roles because, not just because of their experience, because of how they answered my questions, what their kind of life was, how their outlook was. That really shaped that. So I knew when I was coming back to do something, which was also a particularly sensitive topic, as the other one was, that these people, they were up for it, they had the right outlook, they'd be looking for similar things that I would be, and that would be really important when it came to shooting it virtually and not actually being in person. So when it came to it, there's only like 4 or 5 people on this crew, only 2 people actually physically shooting the film, which was also a struggle in itself. But my main DOP camera person called Bella Roberts was absolutely amazing. And we had meetings on Zoom, as everyone did at that time, to figure out how it was going to work. And essentially, I did like a treatment, a pitch, I sent that across to her, she read it, and she kind of got the feeling for how this documentary was going to look. And when she was like, cool, yes, I'm up for this sounds great, let's do this, we sent out virtually to find people that she even knew that she could be part of a bubble with, that we could kind of obey the COVID regulations. This was filmed in the summer of 2020, just when England had kind of started to open back up again, but I was still very cautious about the fact that I don't want to put anybody at risk. I don't want to put my crew at risk. We need to wear PPE, socially distance, shoot outside if possible. Some of the B-roll was even filmed by the interviewee themselves, so they took the camera and they filmed it, which I thought was a really clever way of Bella to do it. And it was strange because it obviously took longer to film because you had to wait in between seeing people to film the next person. Me not being there meant I had to like draft up cinematography references, style references, text, all different references of how I wanted this to look, how I wanted the frames to be, how I wanted the text, the graphics, all this kind of stuff. And also, she never interviewed any person before. She'd seen me do it on my last stop, but she didn't really know how to do it herself, even though I knew she'd be a natural at it, like she can have a conversation with anybody. So I had to draft up, each person, look at each person we're interviewing, what do I kind of want them to talk about from their bio that I got sent, what's a good way to go down that route with them. And if they feel upset, because obviously it's a sensitive subject, if someone's lost someone, if it's not feeling very comfortable, like you can tell them to take a minute, take a breather. We don't have to go down that route if you don't want to. But if you feel comfortable, that would be great, because you're going to let tons of people know who's been in the same position as you that that's okay. Like, you can come back from that. So it was weird. It was a new way of doing it, but I think we all worked really well together, doing this virtually, sending everything across, and even like the footage had to be posted from me in a hard drive in a sleeve all the way from London all the way up north, and you just kind of prayed and crossed your fingers that it was going to get there in one piece. So it was crazy. Looking back, it was a crazy thing to do, but I'm really happy we did it. But it really was an odd way of filming from what we were used to.
Yeah, I'd say very strange to not be able to be on the ground in person at the shooting of your own film. Like that, I don't know, like you really have to obviously have a great sense of trust with the other team members, but also be able to disconnect yourself a little bit, I suppose, because it's such a personal, like writing and directing a film, such a personal experience. Like,
yeah, I just had to have, it was basically just having a lot of faith, and having faith that all the references that I sent across in my communication, whether on the phone or on Zoom and all that kind of thing, would pay off. And thankfully I chose people that I trusted, chose people that I knew could do a really good job, and thankfully that's how it ended up. But I guess it could have gone a completely different way if I hadn't have done that. So yeah, like we said, we're all very proud of what managed to come out the other end.
Yeah, well, and as you should be. It's like just such a well put together documentary. You'd never know that like there was so much back and forth involved in putting it all together. Abigail, would you like to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your career and introduce your film as well?
Yes, for sure. They're just currently cutting down a tree outside, so I'm going to relocate real quick.
No problem.
I don't have to listen to chainsaws. Cool. So I'm Abby. I'm 21. Grew up in New Jersey. And I'm a student at Emerson College, studying production in filmmaking. And before I went to Emerson, I was lucky enough to go to a high school that specialized in film and TV production. So that kind of put me on the path to lead me to where I am now. And I'm super grateful for that opportunity. Yeah, it was very, again, I was really lucky. I was working on my first feature film when I was 16, just because they were filming in my county. So, you know, I've been trying to constantly keep creating things to keep myself in that headspace. And the goal is to eventually write and direct, but I would also love to AD, produce, UPM. We're gonna figure it out. We've got a lot of options.
Ambitious.
Yeah, yeah. So Sunshine now?
Yeah, if you could just introduce Sunshine as well, yeah.
Cool, okay. Sunshine was not a film I was planning to make, obviously. I was admitted to the BA thesis film program at Emerson. And originally, like, I had this idea that I was thinking about for like the past 3 years that I really wanted to make, and then COVID hit and the school put all of these necessary but still restrictions and rules about how we were to conduct sets. So I was like, okay, I can either stick with this idea and try and work around a lot of problems, or I can write something new and kind of adapt to the situation. So Sunshine is based a lot on kind of my experience while being home during quarantine. Just, you know, living in close quarters with family is, it can be a lot, it can be stressful. And then the other thing we did was, in order to create closeness still between the two main characters, we wanted to cast an actually related mother and daughter, so they could do things like hug and give a kiss on the forehead and stuff like that, because otherwise, with COVID and everything, it wouldn't have been allowed. So that paid off a lot. And I didn't realize, even like from a directing standpoint as well, it made their not appearances, performances, like so much better, because it felt very genuine, because I think it was at times. And you know, kind of the same thing that Katie was saying, like we had, I think, a 6-person crew, but we had everyone in face masks, face shields, there was sanitizer scattered around set, because my worst fear was running a set and giving people COVID through my set, whether it was from me or from just everyone being there. That is the situation that I wanted to avoid at all costs. So that was a
responsibility.
Yeah, it is, because, you know, and right now at my age, you can't really pay people to work on your movies. So it was like my friends stepped up for me, and they did a really great job. And the least I could do was keep them safe and feed them, of course. But yeah.
It's actually interesting. Both of your films kind of deal with the subject of kind of the single parent in COVID as well, which is, I suppose, a very particularly difficult circumstance to be in, because it's tough enough, like having to have your child at home from school for such a prolonged period, but like to be the sole person in charge of looking after that child, caring for that child all the time for however long the lockdown was, is just, so I thought that was, and like a perspective that I suppose I definitely wouldn't have heard much about before watching your films, so it made me think a lot about that. Katie, would you tell us a little bit about the single parent in your film, and like how you came to decide that that was an aspect that you wanted to cover?
So when we branched out to see kind of, you know, who the filmmakers could talk to, who were original but also represented kind of that normal-ish experience that would allow people to be in their bubbles and film safely. One of them was called Sam or Samantha, who was a single parent but also a civil servant during the pandemic, and she on top of that also had asthma and had health issues. So she's navigating all these kind of different aspects, which, you know, one on their own during a pandemic when you're a single mother is terrifying. But when I remember she said, like, when you kind of have the thought of oh God, like, I not only do I have a medical issue, but if I catch it, I'm probably going to end up hospitalized in hospital. What's going to happen to my daughter? Who's going to look after my child? Who's going to make sure that she's okay? Because it's only me. There's not anyone else. But it was spoken in a way where it was a fear, but also there was some kind of like, it will be okay. But she was almost keeping herself safe for her daughter, and in the same respect, her daughter keeping herself safe for her mother. And I feel like that reflected a lot of how, especially myself and my partner during this pandemic, keeping yourself safe, not so much for yourself, but for other people, your loved ones, your people around them, the people you're not going to know if you might be asymptomatic and you've given it to them. And that was really why I wanted to include her. To not only because it's powerful and it's an important story, but at the same time, I feel like literally anybody can resonate with that feeling, that emotion, which has been so strong throughout all of this. So for me, that's why I included it.
It's a very like conflicted feeling as well, I suppose, because it means, yeah, like in those circumstances, if someone's in your bubble, you keep yourself safe for them or whatever. But then if someone that you're very close to is outside of your bubble, if they, like, Abigail, you dealt with this in your film as well. There's a scene where the grandmother tries to visit the house and the mother won't let her in, and it's just so, like, it's harrowing is the word that comes to mind. Like, I was just like, my heart kind of broke for especially for the child. Could you tell us a little bit more about that?
I feel like that was probably the hardest part of COVID. Like, the fact that you wanted to be around these people that you love so much, but like we were saying before, but in order to keep them safe, sometimes the best thing you can do is just not see them. Like, I think it had been a year since I gave my grandmother a hug, and it was only after we got vaccinated, which was kind of wild. And, you know, it's pulled from different experiences of different people I've talked to as well. Like, some people knowing that they can't even, you know, talk with some family members over COVID because they weren't taking the necessary precautions or had different viewpoints and weren't being as safe. So there's conflict with that as well. And especially to be a kid with all of this going on. It's also largely based off of, I have a 12-year-old sister. And seeing her deal with a pandemic was kind of crazy. Because though she was, like, you know, upset, obviously, and confused and didn't understand why she couldn't go to school or hang out with friends. I mean, she understood, but it didn't make it any easier for her. She was still, to me, she seemed the most resilient to all of the changes and challenges that it brought. Like, she was always the one who was laughing at the end of the day, like bringing the house up. And I think we don't realize how resilient little kids are sometimes to big changes like that. And it was very cool to see. So Millie is kind of based off of my sister Lily and are part of our experience in COVID.
That's nice to be able to draw inspiration from someone so close to you. It was a strange experience watching both of your films as well, because like it does feel so close. So I recently finished a book where it was the first book that I had read where at the end the pandemic was beginning, and it just feels, it's like kind of like an out of body experience, I suppose, consuming this meat, like, as you watch the news, you read articles and stuff like that, like they're updated minute to minute, but to start consuming media that has been like planned and created over time, like a film or a book, it's such a strange experience. And I'll be interested to see what it's like in a year's time, maybe, please God, when these things seem a little bit further away. It'll be interesting to see what it's like to watch what you guys have made then. Did you put consideration into that when you were directing?
I did, yeah, because I was watching a lot of around me trying to, because this was in March 2021 when I watched kids last semester before me try to make, like they were trying to stick with their original ideas and make a film that wasn't in a COVID world because they didn't want that. Or totally fair. I just thought how difficult it was. And I had this thought, like, if this is what we're living through and it doesn't seem like it's going away anytime soon, I don't think I want to try and pretend that it's there.
Yeah, I can understand that. I like, as a writer as well, you can only go for so long without letting it bleed into what you're doing, like whether it's overt or kind of more like under the surface. So it's great to just be able to say, no, we're not ignoring this. I'm going to document this experience as I'm living it. Katie, what about you?
I mean, obviously when I made the documentary, it was only 5 months, and it kind of went into pre-production like 4 months after COVID had come to the UK and we had, locked down and everything. So it wasn't really, when you're doing a documentary, it wasn't really a case of, do we do a documentary about that? It was kind of, for everyone, it was a very blatantly obvious thing that this is something which is happening. It's going to be history, and in 30 years it's going to be taught to the next couple of generations of people. So we need to document this, but we also need to document this in the way that we want to, the stories that we want to see, not the stories that certain media, certain news outlets, certain demographics which don't have anything to do with us want to see. So that was really important. So obviously there was a lot mentioned about the Black Lives Matter movement and all those terrible things which were happening at the time, and unfortunately still continue to happen, and that it kind of acts as, in a sense, a sort of time capsule for people however many years in the future. In a sense of kind of the idea of what I make next, what I have made since, hasn't particularly had COVID in it, because what I have made since has been fiction, but it has somehow lent itself and been more focused around NHS, health workers, and that kind of situation. So I don't know if I have somehow subconsciously been influenced by that. I probably have. But yeah, but coming from the lockdown takes, it's kind of a no-brainer that we were going to do it about COVID.
It's interesting as well to see, because you can tell from watching the lockdown tapes that it was shot in that kind of first lockdown around then. So it's almost like it's already history, but I suppose because we're still living it, it's particularly jarring isn't the right word, but it is just like a very strange experience to be watching it now.
Yeah.
While it's still happening, but it's not happening in the same way. Like perspectives have changed, and like kind of like watching it, you're like, it's like you get that feel that at the time the idea was that we wouldn't still be here a year later. By the time this film was put together and made, things would be different.
Yeah, that was my hope when we shot it. My hope was that it would act as a reason to stop it happening again. But it got to the point where we had so much footage, so many people, that it didn't get out quite as soon as I wanted it to. And so by the time it did come out, we'd had a second lockdown, a third lockdown, Christmas lockdown, everything after that. So much had happened. It had, in some retrospect, got so much worse. But with that, we had the great news of a vaccine, which I think made it a little bit easier to digest, in a sense. Yeah, my hope was to try and avoid it happening again and again, but it has come to be something which I don't think it's going anywhere. It's going to be here, but we need to be able to treat each other with respect and understand that not everyone's going to be comfortable so quickly with going back to how things were before, because it does really mess with like your mental health and the way you see things. Like people might be like, oh no it doesn't, but it does. It really does mess with how you navigate back to real life. And I think it's, if anybody takes anything away, I hope they take that away, because people need to have that kind of sympathy and understanding of other people. Like it's not just you. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that was like a great kind of like, it was towards the end of the film that your subjects were discussing the mental health implications, and it was like, because some of what like the topics in the film were kind of like a little bit more general, like you were talking about the racism that Asians experienced, and obviously it was a woman's personal experience, but like big topics, and then the mental health really brought it back to the personal, I suppose. It was very like how this is impacting each person individually, whether we know it or not. And Abby, your film kind of did that as well. It really brought that personal aspect in. It's funny because like from watching both of them, you'd almost like, it's the kind of like you could put them together and that's like a horror film. It's like The Quiet Place or something almost, or I wonder, Abby, were you influenced by horror in when you were writing it, or what are your influences?
That's really interesting. Horror. I never thought about that, but I think you're very right. Existence is terrifying, especially now. But I was inspired a lot by the film The Florida Project. I really like the way they let the kids be, and in doing so, the kids said some really like insightful, like very emotional. That was a big point I wanted to make with Sunshine. Like I said before, that like kids are so much more aware and emotionally intelligent than we think they are. They differently. So that was a big inspiration, and we knew we wanted to kind of it all. We wanted it all on handheld. I don't think there's a single shot. There's one shot on tripod, and it's the opening shot. But we did that because we wanted it to feel like a documentary. We wanted you to feel like you were in the room with them, and we thought that doing not going down on sticks or not using any like hard set gimbals would kind of give it that feel. So we were inspired a lot by documentary, Florida Project. The shooting style also kind of came from Nomadland, which is kind of like a dark horror in a way, I suppose, as well.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, and almost surreal kind of. And I suppose using a real life mother and daughter, that like casting of not real people, as if actors aren't real people, but like that cast, I don't know, like there's a certain element of reality in it that like Nomadland has as well, which is like, and you can feel that, like the genuineness, the real closeness of the relationship. Did you script the whole thing, or did you kind of allow them to feel things out a bit as well?
So we came in with a like concrete script, and then whenever we had time, we would just sit and talk. Like a few that were improvised for the conversation at the table, where Ava's like, "I saw a bird," and then the we stuff, the video games, all improvised. Other than that, I think if I had more time with the film, because we 3 days, and the park was very improvised. But if I had more time, I would have loved to just kind of like let them interact with each other and film it. But because we were on such a tight schedule, we kind of needed to make sure we would have a. But yeah.
That's really cool. To finish, Katie, you kind of already mentioned your next moves. You said like you've already made something else, which is just incredible that like you like have in the last year directed, created this documentary and already made something else in the meantime. Would you like to tell us a little bit more about that, your next moves, as much as you can?
Yeah. Well, the film, the most recent fiction film that I did was back in May. And that was actually part of my master's degree.
Mhm.
Because everything was online because of COVID and how it kind of been working here in England, it meant that we all had to, I never really met these people face to face, it was all done over Zoom prep. I wrote it, produced it, directed it, and I edited it. And other people online course worked out, camera, sound, first ADing, all that kind of thing. And my partner even chipped in, bless, to help it all happen. And it was about a NHS paediatric nurse or doctor who had lost one of their favourite children, people that they wanted to save that day, and had come home and was dealing with that grief and that process of feeling like what she wanted to do and set out to do didn't work and wasn't enough, and she wasn't able to save someone. And she's at home, she's trying to like process that, and she gets a phone call and she thinks it's from her co-worker who's trying to console her, and it actually ends up being somebody who, a young child uni student who has found themselves in the middle of an active shooting environment in a university here, and has accidentally dialed her, and it just happens to be that she's a doctor and can help her with her situation. So she's staying on the phone with this girl, trying to process what's just happened, but also knows that if she can find some kind of way to help this girl on the end of the phone, bring her home safe, that it might fulfill her kind of purpose. So it's them kind of reporting back. You see some shots of the uni environment, but you never see her. And a lot of it's done through sound and sound environment, through the phone and that kind of thing, to really play off people's imagination. So that was my master's film. And since then, obviously I did my really long master's thesis, dissertation, whatever you want to call it. And yeah, I was just really lucky that I came out of that degree and managed to land myself this Kickstarter producer job, which I'm just blessed, so happy that just happened to be how things worked out. And I'm at the moment just trying to soak up everything I can, learn everything I can from these people, how production works, gain all these skills to hopefully then, like I said, 20, 30, however many years in the future, run my own production company and make films. That's kind of the end goal, I guess, for a lot of filmmakers. Yeah, that's kind of where I am, where I want to go. Yeah.
Well, yeah, it sounds like you're definitely on track to achieving those goals, and very exciting. Like the idea of starting your own production company is an amazing kind of goal to have as well. So looking forward to seeing more from you anyway.
Thank you.
Will the film that you made for your master's be available to watch? Is it already available to watch?
It will be. So technically my degree's finished. I graduate in December. So after then, hopefully I can actually get it out to people. So people can watch it. The only people who've really seen it now have been the professors and my university's film festival. So those have been the only people. But hopefully soon, yes, and hopefully a new project of my own soon. I'd love to do something about, I don't know if you know much about Newcastle, but it has a very much LGBTQ drag history, and I really want to start interviewing drag queens here and learn more about that culture. So I really want that to be kind of my next big project. But also when you're working, it becomes harder to also do your own projects at the same time. But that's, yeah, I guess everyone's got to have some kind of goal. Mm-hmm. So that's where I hope things will go.
Very cool. I love this. I love the sound of that. It sounds really interesting, whether it's a documentary or fiction. I'd say there's so much there and you can really do whatever you wanted with it. So hopefully see that at some stage in the not too distant future.
Thank you.
Abby, would you like to tell us about what your next moves are?
I'm in LA at my college's LA campus, finishing up my last semester. I'm currently interning for a company called Girl Culture Films, which has been super cool. I'm hoping to stay out here and just kind of figure something out. I'm not sure what. I think I'm looking into joining the DGA and their AD training program. That seems like a cool way to get into the industry. But like Katie, ultimately the goal is, to be able to have your own company, produce your own stuff, like, give a platform to other women, marginalized people. That is the goal. But we shall see. And I also just directed another short, someone else's thesis film that they wanted to shoot. So that's why I did that. But that should be done in October. And that's just about the period between a cancer diagnosis and the start of treatment. The friend who wrote the script, he thought that was the most poignant time in a cancer progression, because it's the one that gets talked about the least. Like, you always see someone in a hospital bed, or of course, which is still important to talk about and make films about, but he wanted to focus on a very small window of time. So that's what the film talks about. But yeah, hopefully that will come out, enter some more festivals.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, we'll figure it out, right?
Well, hopefully we might see you both back at her 2022 then.
Ooh, hopefully.
Thanks a million for talking to us today, guys. It's been really interesting, been great to hear more about your films, and best of luck with everything. Yeah.
And it was nice meeting both of you.
Nice to meet you guys too. It's nice to put a face to the names and films and stuff.
Yeah, I agree.
Very cool. Okay, take care.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.